When you talk about bumping a player, it's pretty much
great courage. One that says the bump is dead, that's how you deliver it.
What is going on, YouTube universe? My name is Trent. Some of you guys might know me as Zirra from other corners of YouTube, and welcome to the Hip and Shoulder, your one-stop shop for AFL action. And today, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to lock in my tips ahead of round 4, Gather Round. You know, that magical round where we all go to Adelaide and we all watch every single game of football played in Adelaide, and that's probably the only thing that's going to be happening in Adelaide this weekend, because other than the football, there is fuck all to do in Adelaide. But in all seriousness though, Gather Round last year was a huge success. It was a great spectacle to watch. Tons of people flocked to different grounds throughout South Australia, and the main thing about Gather Round is exposure to the game in states that really doesn't have much exposure. You know, obviously Australia loves AFL, but outside of Victoria there isn't really much of a push in certain states, especially states like New South Wales and Queensland that are more rugby orientated. So having dedicated rounds in states outside of Victoria really opens up exposure of the game. It allows, you know, families to experience things that maybe they don't get the chance to experience. Fans from those states that can't come to Victoria to watch certain teams if they barrack for a team that isn't Adelaide or Port Adelaide. And it's going to be great to see, because they've finally put a halt on that bye bullshit, and every single team is going to be participating this coming weekend, which is absolutely fantastic. But before we discuss the games ahead of this particular round, let's have a little bit of a reflection of the round that was round 3. And if tipping competitions were based upon the least correct amount of tips, I would be absolutely kicking ass this season. However, instead of kicking ass, my ass has been getting kicked, and I fucking hate it. And my phone just went off. I apologize. Round 3 saw me have a strike rate yet again of 50%, 4 out of 8. The games I got correct was Carlton over North Melbourne, I got Fremantle over Adelaide, I got the Bulldogs over West Coast, and I got Geelong over Hawthorn. I should have backed my gut, because I said Richmond could have loomed as an upset here because they tend to overperform in games that people write them off in, and that was very much the case. Port Adelaide, I thought, should have been a lock at Adelaide Oval, but Melbourne gave them a little bit of a touch-up. Essendon winning in the dying minutes against St Kilda, I did not see coming, especially with St Kilda commanding such a big presence in that game. And Brisbane just lying down against Collingwood. I mean, I got the margin almost spot on, but I picked the wrong team. So, unfortunately, 4 out of 8 for me. For my tipping competition, however, and if you haven't gotten on board with that, there is still plenty of time to do so. It's free to join. Get on board. Let's have some fun. Let's just roll with it, roll with the punches, and have a good time. Tony Chop Chop this week was the singular person in the competition to get the most correct amount of tips, and that was 6 out of 8. So congratulations to Tony. And we now have a tie in first place. Team Wiggle still holding that lead, but now is sitting in second place, tied for first, with Tony Chop Chop, who, after having a big round this past round gone, has moved into first place. And if we dwindle all the way down the ladder, I'm sitting in 18th out of 21, because Courtney finally worked out, I think, that I've got a new channel going on here, and somebody who's been a mainstay in all of the tipping comps I've done over the last 4 or 5 years has gotten on board. So, as I said, if you want to get involved, feel free to do so. Links and everything that you need will be in the description of this video. Moving on to the tips this week, though, there are some really good matchups coming, and some of which wouldn't have been probably earmarked as great contests before the season had started, but given the scope of how certain teams are performing and some are underperforming, it really changes the dynamic, I feel, of the teams that are currently you know, at behest to us and showing us what they are delivering. As I said, every single round of football is in Adelaide this weekend, so it kicks off tomorrow night at Adelaide Oval. Well, at least tomorrow night, based off the fact that I'm currently recording this on a late Wednesday night. Adelaide is hosting Melbourne, and I am going with Melbourne here to win quite compellingly. I'm actually thinking 25 points might be the margin. They proved last week against Port Adelaide that they have the ability to win games in Adelaide. Port Adelaide, I feel, fumbled a unfumbleable game. They should never have lost that game to Melbourne, but they just left the door open for Melbourne to win. And Adelaide have been severely underperforming this year. I touted them as a top 5 team before the start of the season, and they are playing as a bottom 4 team, and rightfully so are in the bottom 4 currently. It's just shocked me, really, because this team should be on the up, knowing how they've drafted, knowing how the list has been formulated over the last couple of years. They showed enough last year and only just missed out on finals, and I thought they'd come out swinging, especially with a softer draw this year, a more favourable draw with primetime games. And have a look, it's egg in the face of the AFL for doing that now, because they are failing to deliver, and it's not going to really, translate well for ratings or anything like that for the AFL at all. But Melbourne should win this one quite convincingly when you compare the 2 seasons we have seen so far. Adelaide back at home could potentially be an upset, but I think Melbourne are getting back into playing a sustainable brand of football, and especially with Stephen May coming back into that defensive line, could keep Tex a little bit quiet this week, just like he was last week. Friday night, Norwood Oval, Brisbane taking on North Melbourne. I think Brisbane here are going to get their first win of the season. To think they are 0-3 is quite a shock. I mean, you've got that Brisbane-Las Vegas trip going around that could be causing some trouble. Are they still carrying some mental demons from the grand final last year? Who knows? But this is a game they must win. And North Melbourne, although they have been losing games, have been very valiant in defeat, and I don't like saying that all too often, but they really have been. They have showed glimpses in every single game they have played, and I don't think they're far off being a complete unit and being able to play a sustainable brand of football. The only thing I think that's going to work against them this week, even though I probably rate North Melbourne's midfield to be on par, if not maybe a little bit better than Brisbane's midfield, and that could be a bit of a controversial take, but North have a really good midfield core on paper, one of the best in the comp, I feel, at least close enough to it. What's going to let them down this week is their lack of tall defenders, and we know Brisbane are going to go tall with Hipwood, with Danaher, and those players, if they can't get their hands on the ball, they're going to drop it to the crummers like Lincoln McCarthy, like Charlie Cameron. McCluggage will fly through. So this is a game I think that the Brisbane Lions not only need to win, but certain players that have been underperforming need to really stand tall. Later on Friday night, I said Friday night for Brisbane, but it was more Friday afternoon. But Friday night, we've got Port Adelaide hosting Essendon. I think Port Adelaide don't fumble 2 games in a row at home. They have played a better brand of football than Essendon. Will the Essendon edge be enough to get them over the line this week? I don't think so. I think Port Adelaide have too much star power in each facet of the ground for Essendon to kind of squash, but they need players like Jeremy Finlayson, like Charlie Dixon, Todd Marshall. They need to fire against a Essendon backline that without Jordan Ridley loses a little bit of interceptability. Nick Martin's not a tall defender. They've got Ben Mackay back there, but outside of Ben Mackay, they don't really have many tools. They've got medium-sized run and dash kind of backmen, but I think Charlie Dixon can really get off the chain in this game if he manipulates the forward structure well enough. Saturday afternoon, West Coast Eagles taking on Sydney. I don't see Sydney fumbling 2 games in a row. They're going to bounce back quite strong from the loss against Richmond last week. Even though Richmond did win, Sydney was still very good when they moved the ball on. And as we have seen from West Coast, they'll probably come out and play a solid first quarter, and then Sydney's going to run away with the game. This is going to be 7+ goals quite easily. Later on that afternoon, we shift to Adelaide Oval with Fremantle against Carlton. I think Carlton are going to be the ones remaining undefeated so far. They're playing a great brand of football, as much as it pains me to say it. Fremantle have been playing a good brand as well, but I think the way they played against Adelaide last week, they need to tighten the screws when it comes up to taking on teams like Carlton. That being said, we have seen in the past teams coming off of a very comfortable win, kind of dropping their guard a little bit the following week. So does a big win against North last week maybe drop their guard a little bit and allow Fremantle to creep back in? This to me is going to be one of the better contests to watch over the weekend, I feel, but I think Carlton are going to be too good. Saturday night rounds out after the Fremantle-Carlton game, still at Adelaide Oval, with the Bulldogs taking on Geelong. This is going to be a really good contest as well. As I said, some very tantalising, very, very tasty matchups this week. I think Geelong are going to get it done here. Luke Beveridge kind of still perplexes me with his thought process. He tactically subs out Liberatore in a game that he didn't need to be subbed out of. He plays Marcus Bontempelli primarily out of the forward 50. He finally selects Jack McRae, but you know what I mean? It's just been a really rough journey seeing how Bevo's throwing the magnets around this year, and it fucking blows my mind as to why. Geelong, on the other hand, are a team that a lot of people would have had missing finals this year. I was one of them. But they're playing a brand of football that is synonymous with the top 4 style Geelong teams that we have seen in the past. And I think a lot of people could have been underrating Geelong's ability this year. Again, another great contest to watch. But I think Geelong are going to be too good for the Doggies. The two teams that are coming off of the bye last week face off Sunday afternoon, lunchtime that is, at Adelaide Hills. We've got the Gold Coast taking on GWS. And I'm taking GWS. They're going to be another team that is sitting undefeated after their handful of games that they have played. They have been, in my opinion, one of the benchmark teams of the competition this year. I feel Sydney and GWS, respectively, have been setting the tone. Some people are saying Carlton's the tone setter. I don't think so. I think GWS play more cohesively. I think Sydney play more cohesively. If you take performances from Harry Mackay and Charlie Curnow off the table with Carlton, there really is a disparity there, I feel. And I think Carlton's season hinges on keeping those players on the field. Whereas for a GWS, they are sharing the load, and we've got some players, playing back into career best form. It's the best that we've seen Lockie Whitfield since 2019. Stephen Coniglio is firing. Undoubtedly the hottest start that we have seen Tom Green have for GWS. So it's really good to see this unit running. And I'm really getting behind the Giants this year. As a Richmond supporter, watching every single game every weekend as a neutral, GWS are one of those teams that I get really excited to watch. And I think they're going to get it done quite comfortably against the Gold Coast. Norwood Oval Sunday afternoon sees Richmond taking on St Kilda, and I'm going to back Richmond here. I didn't do it last week against Sydney, and I feel after seeing how Richmond played this past weekend gone, we can string some wins together if we play that brand. We finally showcased the Adam Uze brand that has been spoken about, and being able to slow down tempo, control the ball, get it on our terms is something we haven't seen from Richmond, because it's always been that manic handball and that run and dash. I really appreciate that we're getting something a little bit different. I loved that we were hunting in packs. The pressure rating was off the charts. St Kilda, on the other hand, get Max King back in this week. We are without Noah Bolter. We are already without players like Dylan Grimes. We are without Gibkiss. We've lost James Trezise. So defensively, we're put into a bit of a hole where either Young or Miller is going to want to play on him, and that means Max could go 3 to 5 goals quite comfortably in this game. Marcus Windhager won't be playing for St Kilda because of suspension, and he plays a very good lockdown kind of run with role, so that frees up someone like a Taranto or a Bolton. But on the flip side, Richmond, as I said, without Bolter, without Tom Lynch, Liam Baker is out on suspension. We are looking at possibly recalling Grimes, Dustin Martin, Jack Graham. So I think those players coming back in fresh as well could tip the scales a little bit. I think this should be one of the better games to watch on the weekend as well, but I'm backing my Tigers in to get it done. And the final game of the round, Collingwood taking on Hawthorn. I'm going with Collingwood. The second half against Brisbane was sensational. They got back into their systems. They played the brand that we have seen them win a premiership with last year, opposed to Hawthorn, who were in the fight against Geelong. Don't get me wrong, but it was a one-fisted fight in many aspects, because it was James Worpel who was carrying that midfield core, and if it wasn't for Worpel playing as well as he did, I don't think they would have even come as close to they were to Geelong by three-quarter time. So just to wrap up who I'm tipping this weekend, we're going with Melbourne, Brisbane, Port Adelaide, Sydney, Carlton, Geelong, GWS, Richmond, and Collingwood. I don't know whether there's going to be any upsets. There could be a realm where Hawthorn knock off Collingwood if Collingwood plays the terrible brand we've seen them play in the opening few rounds. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bulldogs take it to Geelong. Fremantle against Carlton, you can never really rule out. Essendon against Port Adelaide, possibly. And Adelaide could potentially. So there's room for upset, but I'm comfortable with who I've gone with this week. Before we wrap things up, just like I introduced last week in my tipping video, for those of you that like to have a little bit of a punt on the football each and every weekend, I've got a couple of multis to throw out your way that have been formulated for myself specifically for you guys to get on top of. The first one is a 13-leg same-game multi coming in for the Brisbane North Melbourne game. We've got Joe Danaher at 2+ goals. Charlie Cameron at 2+ goals, Paul Curtis at 2+ goals, Darcy Wilmot, Jared Berry, Cam Rayner, Zach Bailey to all have 15+ disposals, Brisbane to win head-to-head, 25+ disposals for both Luke Davies-Uniacke and Harry Sheezel, 20+ disposals for Josh Dunkley, and then Lincoln McCarthy and Zach Bailey as anytime goal scorers, and that is going to net you a very tasty $21. The second multi coming in is for the Richmond St Kilda game and is an 11-leg same-game multi, with St Kilda winning head-to-head. Nick Vlosten, Marlon Pickett to both have 20+ possessions, Jack Steele to have 25+ disposals, Rowan Marshall to have 15+ disposals, Jack Sinclair for 25+ disposals, Tim Taranto for 20+ disposals, anytime goal scorer for Ryan Mansell, and then 2+ goals to be kicked from Max King, Jack Higgins, and Shea Bolton. Now, obviously, this goes against the fact that I have tipped Richmond this week, but I'm not the one who formulates these multis. So if it goes wrong, you can blame my mate Damo, who has put these together. But if you want to have a crack, get on board. This one is very tasty because it's going to get you $51 return. It's a little bit out there, but if you're a gambler and you want to take a risk, this could be one for you to get on top of. As always, though, I do not force any hands when it comes to gambling. If you do want to take some of these things on board, if you want to have a bit of a punt and you take on these suggestions, do so at your own risk. Be sure to gamble responsibly. I think that's, it speaks volumes for itself. You don't need to be told. It is all over the TV. They love shoving it in your faces that they want you to gamble, but you got to make sure that you do it responsibly and make sure you still got a little coin left in your pocket. You don't want to put yourselves out of a very terrible position. So feel free to get on board, but it's not my fault if you lose, okay? And I'm passing the blame off to the people that formulate these multis for me. They can get fucked. That is it for this video. Do hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, do me a favor and hit that like button down below. If you want to get on board the community, we are slowly but surely building. I would appreciate it a lot. And you can hit that subscribe button to get on board that community. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here. Good luck to your teams this weekend. And as always, I will catch you guys next time.